Hi there, once again, welcome to another Lemon Amiga play guide and review. This time we'll be checking out Castles. Castles 1.1 in fact, developed by Interplay and published by Electronic Arts in 1991. And this title screen also contains the options to change our name, to change the name of our castle, to change what messengers appear, and real world or fantasy world as well. And we can also change our level of difficulty, a castle which is a single castle, a 3 castle mode, or even a 5 castle mode. And we can also change the speed of development from laboured, which is quite slow, all the way up to the fastest mode. So there are quite some options available, and changing to fantasy mode is basically the second half of the game, where we get to fight ogres and dragons and that kind of thing. So when we are happy with everything, we can click on done, and that will enter the game world itself. In Castles, we get to play as King Henry II, and he ruled from 1154 to 1189, so you can see the dates in the corner are wrong again by about 100 years. But according to the manual, we're definitely playing as Henry, and you can see Richard the Lionheart, West Hampton, he will appear, our son will appear with problems every now and again, and it's up to us to sort out those problems and to answer A, B, C or D. And you can click on those with the mouse or simply press the button on the keyboard. At the start of the game we get a number of options in the top corner, just like SimCity, and with that game we get a world builder, and in this game we have to build a castle. And in the corners of the castle we can build something to surround a keep, and in the centre we'll have to build a keep area in order to keep the flag which is in the middle of the castle. And if the enemy takes our flag, then that means, I think, it's game over. So in order to build a keep we can build a nice square Norman tower in the middle of it, and we can link that up with walls. See some more options. We can load and save and check out councillors as well, and we can click on the taxes. At this point we're just going to lower the generous taxes to a generous amount, and you can see archers, we can hire a number of those. And it's good to set these things up at the start of the game. We can hire guys, let's hire 2 lots of guys so we have quite some more. We can hire some labourers as well. Labourers want 2 days of holiday throughout the kingdom. Fine, we can just accept that. And now once all the options have been set up, we can return back to the design stage and continue with our castle. But no, Richard of West Hampton brings disturbing news. Deaths throughout. Request the bishop hold services and hope the plague abides. Bury the bodies, burn them, or let the plague run its course. Well, it's up to you what you decide to do in this game, and definitely the kingly duties for me is what pulled me into this game and gives it most of that depth. So by clicking on something and assigning labourers to that, they will then get busy and build whatever it is that we've assigned to click on. And in this case we're building a tower at the front of our keep, and as soon as we've got the keep built, at least that's the middle bit of the castle done, and we should be able to defend that as long as it's got enough walls. And so just like the settlers, we can see a number of people depending on who we've managed to hire, and hiring lots of labourers at the start of the game is essential, which means that the work gets done all the quicker. And we can check out a real-time 3D view or the overhead view as well, and from here that helps us build things. Luckily I don't think we can squash our labourers, but we'll just have to watch out for those as we build our castle. Let's put a gate on the front of it, and you can see days left, 125 days it will take us to build that gate because there's no workers assigned to that. And so you'll just have to assign the workers as you continue to build your castle. At this stage it's important to build everything up very quickly, and we can even select windows in certain items as well, and windows help because we can pour out boiling oil and things, and arrows through those holes as well with our archers. Let's increase the labourers on another section. That's a wall section, so now that we can get busy building those walls. And it's paramount to prioritise what you want to build first of all, because we will get raided, and it's important to build up our military as well so that we have the forces to defend that castle. So we have another guy with our kingly duties. There'll be 20 guys coming to us with problems every now and again, all different, with all different problems and mission trees, and if you get those right then you can ignore them, and if you get those wrong then unfortunately that will lead to some pain. So what do you want to do? Throw the knight into prison, advise the knight to show more restraint, or commend the knight on a wise and proper action? Well, there are no right and wrong answers to some of these, and it depends on your own wisdom as to what you decide to do. Berserker Celts are on suicide run. Now it will switch to the other side of the game, which is the battle part. The enemy approaches you from the south. You're going to have to remember which direction that they're attacking from, and then you can fortify that direction with whatever you've managed to build up. You can see we've got archers that we can click on, and we can deploy those in strategic positions. They will stay put and they will fire arrows onto the heads of the enemy, and you can't do anything with those. You just have to leave those wherever you put them, and rating is poor at the moment, so they're not going to have much in the way of fighting ability, but we can train, as we shall see later on. You can only place our troops close to the castle. You can't place them out in no man's land. You have to get them quite close to the castle, and you can activate those troops by clicking on them during the battle. As soon as every single one of your battle units is placed down on the field of battle, then the battle will start, and you don't have to place all of them, and it gives you quite some time to place everybody down, and then the enemy arrives and you get to click on main, you get to see the 3D view, and now we can see that battle taking place. Here they come, the enemy. These are the Celts in this game, and you can see maybe 6 guys now attacking, and what we need to do is soften them up with the longbows first of all, and then if any one of those gets near our infantry we can click on them and the infantry will automatically attack. They are pretty darn difficult at this stage, and you might think that we can get through them pretty easily, but once most of them have died, then that's that section over with. We've survived that battle. So as soon as that happens, then the workers will start to pour out again. Archers' bows become obsolete. Spend 50, yes, we'll definitely spend 50 coins upgrading the archers' bows, because we really need those to be the best as possible. You can see the windows option is highlighted as we place some defensive turrets around the front of our castle, and if we build those up only slightly at the beginning of the game, it means we've got a raised platform for the archers to fire down on the enemy. So that's definitely possible, and by clicking on those that will highlight them, and then you simply assign some labourers, how many we've got available, and if you click on something that's already been built, then we can deassign labourers from that and reprioritise those. So checking out the military, we want to train that military as much as possible, and let's assign as many people as possible to that military that we can at this stage. 100 archers, 75 soldiers, that's pretty good at this stage, and we need to keep an eye on that. They're mediocre at the moment, and that will go up every month, so every month we'll have to remember to click on the train option to train up our guys. We really don't want those to be weak at this stage or at any stage during the building of our castle. As we place down walls, you can see arrow slits is highlighted, and we really need to select the cauldrons option as well, and that will mean that if any of the enemy attack the walls of our castle, it will fire cauldrons of boiling oil down upon their heads. Once that's selected, it's remembered, but if you forget to select that, like I did, then you're going to have to select that before they are built. Otherwise, once a fortification is built, then you can't change it, you can't knock arrow holes in there and things like that. Cauldron pits, you just have to build those while it's developing. We've got another guy rolling up now, it's the Bishop. Majesty, Celts, doing this and doing that, and it's anti-Christian. What do you want me to do? Will your majesty give the church millions and millions to fight off the Celts? Well, you can give the church some money, suggest the church pays half, or you can offer half and say, well, come back for the rest later. Depends how much money you've got, and it doesn't tell you how much cash you've got at the moment, but we do have hopefully enough cash to pay them off. And we'll have to, I think, click on the goods page to find out how much actual cash that we've got at any stage, but we have got enough, and so we have in the bank 2,712 coins, so that's enough. And we can click on the moat as well at this stage. The more we click on that moat, the more they'll build the moat, and we can click on that twice in order to build a moat that's twice as deep and twice as wide. So clicking on the labour and building the moat is again a handy feature because it slows down that enemy. So I like to build the moat around our castle pretty early, but of course if you want to expand your castle and build extra elements on that, then you don't want to build a moat at this stage. You want to lay down all of the foundations, and then once you've got the main building blueprinted out in the field, then you can dig a moat around the entirety of that. And definitely with castles too that we'll be seeing, definitely making a gatehouse is appropriate and making it as hard as possible for the enemies to attack. At this stage it's all about prioritising our labours, and we can afford to buy some more, but it's about rationing our budget, and I like to put most of my budget into building and training the troops to defend the castle, and it doesn't really matter how long it takes to build the castle. This game keeps you interested at every stage, because as soon as we've built something, we'll get attacked, and as soon as we are resting on our laurels, something else will come along to test our patience. So Carthage Castle has got 0 pieces built at the moment because I'm reorganising my defences into the front of the castle, and if you build a castle that's too small, then that's not very good. So a messenger arrives from Rome, Holiness, saying requests muster 2,000 men, and again you'll have to memorise how many men and how many troops you've actually got available, and they will be taken away from the troops that we have got available. I can send them all, I can send 2,000 if the church pays us up, which isn't too bad because we can train some more, or we can send none, and each one of these will have repercussions, and if we send none then the Pope will be angry, and that will be the end of our relations with that. So it's a difficult choice, and you have to be aware of how much money you've got in the bank at every stage and how many troops we've got available to send to local skirmishes, because there will be local skirmishes and we'll have to decide. And again, the enemy attacks, I think that said southeast. It's paramount to remember which direction that they're attacking in, but for now I like to cover the front of my castle. You You can see in this particular place that we've built on, it's protected at the rear by the river, and nobody could swim in these days, otherwise you were branded a witch. So the river is definitely a great defensive system against this kind of attack, and at the front we can deploy some troops so that if they appear from the southwest to the southeast, we can reach them. But of course the longer they have to run to the enemy, the less effective they'll be, and the enemy will start to fill in the moat and get the shovels out and dig the moat before they can attack that castle. So this is our first line of defence, and we are now, we've got 2 turrets at the beginning of our castle, which is supposed to be our keep, and now the Celts are attacking again. And so just like north and south, we'll have to assign our troops, and we'll have to decide when to send those in and when to hold those back. In the original castles we can only build 1 castle and then it appears to be game over. This is Castles 1.1 we're playing at the moment, the northern campaign, and this sees us versus the Picts rather than versus the Celts for most of it. So in this update, it's definitely an updated version where we get to buy things from shops and things like that. We'll have to take care of the grain as well, take care of our goods. So there are things that have been added to the game, and as long as we have got grain in store, it means we can't be sieged, and the enemy can siege us if we make the wrong choices. And definitely if you get on the wrong side of the Picts at any time, they will siege us out, and that means that we'll have to have grain available in the castle to survive that siege, and that will deplete pretty quickly. And if you have siege, definitely 100 sacks of grain I'd say is the minimum, and you're going to have to buy that month by month as the harvest comes in order to be able to have that to afford in case we have a siege. And we can double the amount of workers at this stage as long as we can afford it. We've doubled it and doubled it again. We've now got 60 instead of the 20 that we had. So usually with 60 employees or whatever, that means that we can get loads on the go. You can see we're training up loads of troops now, 200 and 300 guys. We've got over 400 sacks of grain, which is fantastic. 469 sacks, which means we should be able to outlast the small or medium siege, and that means that we can now assign, by clicking on things, we can assign labourers to that part of the castle, and the free total at the bottom will go down. I think you can only assign a certain number of people to every single element. You can see we've turned on the arrow slits and the cauldrons as well, and by planting those walls down, now we can make sure that they have got those defences in place. And I'm defending the water side, which is definitely not what you want to do, but if you can defend the land side and the bottom side of your castle, that makes it extra special and extra easier. You can see that most of the green area is flat land we can build on, and we haven't chosen to build on the boggy land, which has no effect at this stage whatsoever. And so we are now building our castle. It's August 17th, 1295 according to this, and we're being raided again. So we can place our archers on the battlements or in the towers, and we can place those anywhere we like, and those will appear on the battlefield at the height that those have been built up to. And if we don't have any walls, then they'll be placed there where we should have had the walls. So let's put an army down. Usually they attack from the southeast or the southwest. Let's put everybody down, and that means that we now have much more troops to defend ourselves, and hopefully if they are appearing from the southwest, we should be able to defend. If they are appearing from the southeast, then we're going to have to get our troops over there pretty quickly. Let's see where they are, and yet again the same old guys, and we can send all of our army in there straight away, but that's a bit of a waste because that means that we'll waste army guys and we'll have to train those up all over again. But if They are excellent soldiers or elite soldiers that we can have in this game. That means we can take out the enemy all the quicker. That means we can save guys. So what I like to do is train those up straight away, and before we can even do that, Richard the Lionheart butts in with another question. My liege, the masons are now loudly crying. What shall we do? Threaten the workers, tell the masons to work it out, or tell the merchants to pay the masons some money? And what we're actually going to do is tell them to pay them some money, because money in this game and keeping everybody sweet is the key to it. If they want a holiday, give them the holiday. And so you'll be interviewed by maybe 20 different guys depending on the scenario. It's completely random, and at the start of the game sometimes your brethren or sometimes even your sons will get into trouble with the Picts, and they will say, I'm in love with the Picts princess, what can you do about that? And they will get into a long love story that lasts months and months, and the Picts will eventually get bored and attack us, and that's game over. So if any one of your sons or daughters wants to get involved with the Picts, it's best to stamp it out early. And there'll also be soothsayers as well, saying that they've seen a sign in the heavens and it's all bad things, and if you encourage the soothsayers then you'll get them peddling the words of the village, and that means the villagers will rebel, and that's a bad thing. So stamp that out as well. If you get any mystics or psychics or people selling you wares or selling you the lucky rabbit's foot or the crown of Arthur, yes, you can find those in the game. I've no idea what difference that makes to the game, but if you encourage those people then the people will rebel. You'll get all kinds of peddlers of mysterious equipment appearing in the village. The villagers become superstitious and rebel and start howling at the moon, and you won't have many workers to build your castle. So you will get people, the Pope and people from Wessex and Essex and Sussex, and people coming up saying there's a rebellion and you need to send troops here and you need to use your kingly duties there, and you need to keep the Pope on your side and Normandy on your side and keep the Picts at arm's length, and we've got this and we've got that. So for me the very best parts of the game is the kingly duties, where we get to decide morality, and our moral traits will definitely be tested in this game. If we can answer those questions then we can get through it, and if we can't then that will severely detriment us sometimes when people are squabbling. This period of history definitely people were squabbling, and King Henry II had to deal with a huge rebellion that came when his son, also called Henry, Henry Jr., went to France. He was crowned king, but he didn't have any kingly duties or any kingly powers whatsoever, so he went over to Normandy and incited a rebellion, and so Henry had to put the rebellion down, and he forgave his son. He went to Ireland and he didn't get very far there. He tried to beat the Welsh, he didn't get very far there, and for the latter part of his reign it was all about taking care of rebellions which were cited by his siblings and putting those down. Endless rebellions by Richard and John and Henry. They were always trying to get armies together to take the king down. He forgave them all, and it looks like we're going to forgive the Pope as well. And Roger of Westhampton has informed me that the cemetery of this fief has fallen into prey of the Vandals, and so what do you want us to do? Pay for that, I suppose. And usually it's a good thing if you have the money to pay for things, and you can investigate things, and you can investigate local tombs and get archaeologists investigating things, and you'll have to investigate corruption as well, and investigate bishops that have gone haywire, and investigate all kinds of tax evasion and things like that, and workers' rights and builders' rights and villagers' rights and things like that. So you'll have to investigate things, and they'll go on for months and months until that investigation is completed, and after that then we will find out whether your kingly choices have been correct or whether they've been misguided. And sometimes these stories can have very dire consequences if we don't get those right. So So building the castle is the sole aim of the game, and as soon as you've built that, it will be attacked by a huge army, and then once you survive that, then that's game over. It will simply exit to DOS. And this extended version 1.1 gives us an option of a 3 or a 5 castle campaign. I installed this to the hard drive from the original discs, or at least from the copied ADFs that are available online, and for some reason it still quits to DOS. As soon as we've completed the first castle, it says, right, you've done your mission, that's it. And then I've no idea whether it's supposed to continue from that point. But the building of the castle is the long-term goal, and that means that the aim is to simply survive until that point, and it's the survival aspects that give this game the depth. And surviving and getting into the stories, the backstories, and who's marrying who and who's killing who and which castle's fallen down and all the rest of it, you'll definitely get a unique story every time you play this game. And I've played it a couple of times. I think you can save it and load it up at any point, which is great. And you can see I'm defending the wrong side of the castle. So now that we know that, let's send some troops into action, and we can direct troops by clicking on their destination, but they won't stop moving. If you click on that, then they'll continue to the enemy, and we're trying to keep them arm's length. And now that we've got elite troops, then those Celts are simply demoralised, and we can keep those arm's length. This is the time of King Henry, and of course after the battles of Mercia and the battles of Wessex, we got Alfred the Great and Edward the Confessor and a united Britain, and then Harold Godwinson showed up, and he had to fight Harald Hardrada of Norway, who was trying to take over the kingdom, and he marched his way up there in 4 days and defeated him. And then King William the Conqueror, who he had signed a pact with, stabbed him in the back and said, well, I'm going to invade Kingdom of England anyway. And so William the Conqueror invaded, and that means that we got the Norman invasion. And the French have never actually successfully landed a maritime raid on the Kingdom of England and taken over chunks of it, but the Normans, actually the great-great-grandson of King Rollo, was William the Conqueror, and Rollo's descendants were the Sea Kings who came from Finland. So that's how the people from Normandy attacked Britain, because they were basically the Sea Kings, who were descendants from them. And so they landed, and they were still kicking around Hastings for a bit before Harold Godwinson came back and attacked them, and he got bored of the battle and decided to attack him anyway, and instead of playing the long game, he went down from his high vantage point, and that's when he got slaughtered. So that led to the Norman conquest, of which we had William I, William II, Henry I, and here we are, Henry II. See now that we're fortifying our castle now for another attack. Now that we've got plenty of troops in the field, that means we can line them up, and that makes the job slightly easier. Henry II is perhaps most famous for the Thomas Becket affair, when Thomas Becket, his great friend, and he said, how do we deal with these guys? The church is trying to take us down, the nobles and the barons are trying to take us down. And Henry had a great idea, why don't you become Archbishop of Canterbury, and that should mean that you can get the church on our side, and between the both of us we can rule the kingdom. And that was fine until this guy actually got delusions of grandeur, and that meant that he decided to become representative of the Pope, and he thought he was holier than thou, and so Henry II had him bumped off. And so Thomas Becket is a martyr and a saint because he got killed because he stood up for the cause, and unfortunately it was lightly assumed that the king had him murdered, even though they couldn't prove that at the time. The king had been spreading rumours about the guy, so that was that, and then that made some feuding happen, and then that meant that, well, that had to be ironed out over the next few years. So it wasn't an easy reign for Henry II, there's always something going on. And so let's save this up again, save up our progress, just to make sure that we've got that. And if we assign everybody to the walls in unison, you can see they build scaffolds and they lift huge great rocks up to the top. Well, they will place them down, and we can see stone by stone how we build those up. And at the top of that we'll get some battlements from which we can fire our missiles, as long as we have enough troops. And in this game it doesn't give us enough troops to defend the entire castle if it's too big. And in this castle we've actually forgotten to build an outside door, and if we don't build an outside door it means that we can't complete the castle. We build the keep door and we'll keep that locked, but unless we build the door to the outside it will say sorry, you're going to have to rebuild the castle and knock a wall down to build an outside door. And maybe our best defence is to build the outside door facing the river. That means we can't get attacked. During this particular play, it means that the Archbishop is still on our back. Thomas Becket, what do you want now, Thomas? Attend an opening day, refuse the invitation, stall and suggest you might attend later. Well, in this case, I'm going to attend the opening day, and it says the play is a great success. You make an impromptu speech and that rouses everybody's morale in the entire kingdom. So just by selecting that one thing, managed to keep the Archbishop into tow and the entire kingdom as well. And the villagers in this game will definitely rebel and things like that. So if there's any opening days and any feasting days and anything like that, it's best to always attend them in person, make speeches and make a big noise, and that will mean that your citizens will command some kind of respect. So excellent rating now, we've got as many soldiers as we can, 300 infantry and 285 archers. We've got 24 resources left which will help us build the castle. We've got 3.7 thousand in the bank. We've got 35 out of 46 sections built. So let's skip on through, and yet again Beckett's around our neck. We've found somebody's stealing holy relics from our chapel. What shall we do? We've got grave robbers hanging around. What do you do? As a matter of fact, the merchant begins, but abruptly he spots his error and falls quiet. Your decision: imprison and exile the guy, or congratulate the guy, or ignore him. Well, I'm not quite sure what I did in this situation. Let's see what key I keyed on the keyboard. And it looks like we've imprisoned him and he's complaining that my trade will suffer. Not quite sure, but whatever way, you can have to banish those guys from the kingdom who are selling those holy relics. And as long as we play our cards right and keep everybody sweet, then it should be a relatively peaceful time in the kingdom. We're going to have to, at random, make sure that we deal with harvests failing and unhappiness and raids, but as long as we keep everybody sweet. Look at that, we've now got elite troops, 300 out of 300, we've now got over the 500 grain that we need, and we're running the Roman 5% interest rate, 5% income tax, which is very generous and keeps everybody nice and happy. And now we've gone down to 2,200 in the bank, and that's because we're employing all these people. I think if you have 40 of each, then that's a good start, and that means that you have enough people, hopefully, to defend this castle. So while you wait for me to realise that I haven't built a door in this place, I'll just say this came on 2 discs, just like Kingdoms of England, and it was hard drive installed. At the end of every year you'll find that the peasants have a holiday, and that means that you come back in April. And it's great to see that holiday screen at the end of every year. The peasants will celebrate and have a huge banquet, and we'll get some music with that as well, which is also helpful. We'll also get some more cash flooding into the bank. So there is an outdoor door that is needed. Interplay, you might remember from the Bard's Tale series of games, which carried on for quite a while, and also the Battle Chess series of games. They also published The Lost Vikings and The Lord of the Rings Volume 1, which is kind of an action adventure, and that's not to be confused by Battle of Middle-earth, which is a strategy game. But if you want Lord of the Rings, a real-time joystick explore 'em up, then you might find Lord of the Rings Volume 1 by Interplay is perhaps something that definitely needs a play guide all of its own. We won't be doing a play guide for that in this particular series, although a bit later on we will be reviewing Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth. So Interplay does have a great legacy. They moved on to the PC, of course, with other battle games, and they continued their legacy until they were bought out, I think, by perhaps Electronic Arts, or maybe Infogrames bought them first and then EA swallowed them up. So that went on and went on, and so the scores for this game were a mixed bag, and the reviewers of this game said that it was flat and lifeless, and Amiga Force said that there was no depth behind the game whatsoever, and so gave this a lowly score. So Amiga Magazine gave this 40%, Amiga Force gave it 49% with those criticisms, Amiga Joker gave it 53, Amiga Power gave it 58, Amiga Computing gave this 63, Amiga Action awarded it 71, Generation 4 gave it 71, Amiga Force gave it 72, Acar gave it 75, the current Lemon Amiga score is 76%, Zero gave this 79, Dato gave this 82, CO Amiga gave this 88% and an award, and Amiga Mania gave this 90%. That means the average score with all those low scores and high scores is round about 7.5 out of 10, which means this is a great game. CO Amiga said that this has a lot of depth, and they praised the fantasy mode where you get ogres and dragons and fantasy elements attacking, and maybe if you have dragons attacking your castle and breathing fire everywhere, that adds the depth that these other reviewers said that the game simply had not got. And 1.1 has more depth because you get the trading element as well, and other elements which were bolted onto this, so definitely I'd recommend the Northern Campaign 1.1 over that standard version of the game. So if you can find that, and apparently there is a bug where if you try to install the campaign over the original game, it will simply wipe that off the disc. But with the Amiga version, it is possible to play both of those, and of course you have the ADFs. So this is it, the castle is now built. That means that the final attack will attackers, and you can see that we're raining arrows down into their protective defences, will be attacked by constantly by different waves of the enemy, and it's up to us how to ration our troops so that they don't all get killed at the start, and if we leave those standing around then they will get killed, and if we don't choose to attack with them then they will take some heavy losses, I think. So I'm using a troop to defend the others, and I'm trying to keep the others at arm's length. The attackers will use siege engines and things like that to try to get close to the castle, and that's interesting to see all those battle developments happening. And there isn't much in the way of action, everything's basically around the battle scenario, and as long as we build in the lowlands it should be pretty easy to defend these last attackers. So I think that the game does have depth. My favourite element is definitely the kingly duties, which change every single time you play the game, and so every time you save it up and continue, and that's continuing the storyline from where you last left off on that particular play, and as I say, if there's castles with dragons flying around and things like that, maybe that gives it the extra depth that it needs. But this game reset as soon as I completed it, so this game does continue. You'll probably get 2 hours of enjoyment out of it before you've built your castle. And you can see the final raid is huge, and you'll have to defend your castle for everybody if you want to survive that using all of the resources at your disposal. After this game, Henry realised that it was his wife all along, Eleanor of Aquitaine, that was disturbing the peace and was riling up all of his sons to rebel against him. So what he did is locked up his wife, Eleanor of Aquitaine, and that started the seeds of the 100 Years' War, because we did have Normandy and Brittany and Aquitaine at that time, and so that meant that we did have a big chunk of land. And so she was imprisoned, but after Henry died, his son Richard was perhaps the first one to release her from the shackles where she was before, and that meant that she was now free. She was an elderly woman by this time, but finally Eleanor of Aquitaine was free, and Richard took over the reins, Richard the Lionheart, and he was trying to settle himself in the Holy Lands, and so he set off for the Crusades pretty rapidly, and that left the door open for King John, and John Softsword came along, who everybody hated. So this is him, Richard the Lionheart, wishing us farewell. He's talking about the Holy Church honours thee as the great champion, the Pope, as homage, and you're now amazing, the people love you dearly, they long for the day when you will again walk amongst them, and all the rest of it. The people of Lothian are not aggressive by nature, and you need to build first size castle here. I strongly recommend, strong to complete. So it looks like maybe we've started the game again, but this guy does give us some helpful information along with our quest. And you can see that we've now completed the castle, and everything is now completed, and I think that's game over. I do have respect for this, and there's a period of history in the time of kings and castle building. This was definitely the start of that period, and the first stone castle in the whole of Britain, in fact most of the whole of Europe, was the Stone Keep, which is the White Tower, which is the middle of the Tower of London. So it's a nice square Norman castle, as you'd expect. So the White Tower in the middle of the Tower of London was actually the first castle, the very first one virtually in the whole of Europe. And so they carried on building castles and updating the Motte and Bailey castles from that time all the way into the future. So thank you for watching this review and this play guide of this game. It's pretty rudimentary, most of it is about answering questions, but in the next part we'll be going on to the reign of John, and so we'll see of course Robin Hood, and we'll see Defender of that Crown. So thanks once again for checking out this medieval banquet series. And before we leave, what I'm going to do is show you an example of what happens if you don't defend the castle. The people will eventually fill in the moat, and as soon as they touch the castle walls, that will get demolished. And once all the castle walls are demolished, that means it's game over. So it's pretty good to see that. It's not as good as the Settlers, it's not as good as a Civilization type game, even though people compared this to Railroad Tycoon and Sim City and all those others, it's not really. And to say that this is a full price game, it's not really as fleshed out as the sequel Castles 2, which we'll definitely be moving on to a bit later on. So thank you for viewing this guide, and I hope to see you again in another one sometime soon. Thank you.